Hello and welcome to the hardest game. My name is Ben Doughty, and I'm especially delighted to be joined this evening by my recently found but good friend, or recently forged but good friend, Jay Veer. I was hoping you put your surname on the screen, Jay, just to remind
Sorry,
me.
I just put JV. It's JV Astana. Yeah.
Hastana. I knew it was. It was on the tip of my tongue. For any of you unfamiliar, Jay is an independent film director, amongst other things, and we've been working on a movie recently. Working title was Gypsy King. Now the title is Ron Barrow, which I'm sure Jay can explain if anybody needs some explanation as to that nomenclature. Welcome, Jay. Good to see you again. Feel like I've been seeing a lot of you recently.
Oh yeah, let's spend the weekend together, didn't we?
Absolutely, yeah, in a house in Hanwell or in Northfields,
Yeah,
Northfields.
yeah, Northfields. No, it was lovely. It was good. We got a lot done that day. We're almost there. Like we're so close. I think 5 more days, final fight day, and then we're there. We
So
got
I've shared one thing I like about your schedule with the movie is it's almost like an ADHD kind of agenda that we're going to get this knocked out really quickly. You've already put reels together and trailers, which I love because I'm pretty impatient. I don't like waiting 18 months or 2 years just to see something that you started in. So for the benefit of it, I've got a lot of interest when I've shared the trailers and little outtakes and things like that on my Facebook page in particular. But could you explain, for the benefit of the viewers who are tuning in as we speak, could you explain the premise of the film Ron Barrow and what inspired you to write it in the first place?
I mean, realistically, I like making storylines that are a bit weird and like that can like so I run a writing group. I ran a writing group, and I wanted to write something that was fun. And the first idea that came into my head was like a tournament style movie, like Bloodsport or Enter the Dragon. So that was the
Which
premise
I
I
love
worked
that
out.
film Enter the Dragon, by the way.
Oh mate, it's one of my favorites. So I wrote that on the top of my sheet. I was like, it has to be like Enter the Dragon, and then I started writing this quite a generic story about gypsies, and I wanted to use Ardash, who's my mate from MMA, and he's Nepali. I was going to make him look like
Nepalese.
Bruce Lee and things like that. And then the lady that was also on the writing group, she was like, "What makes you think you can write a movie about gypsies and make it quite generic?" And there was a lot of back and forth with us, and I did take a point on board. Like, if I'm going to write a story about a community that I'm not part of, I can't write it so wishy-washy. I had to give it enough research and credit where it could be respected as a movie rather than just some guy who thinks it's funny to write about gypsies and travelers. So that made me dive a lot deeper and go into like reaching out to people in the traveler community and in the Roma Gypsy community and talk to them, research their history, where they come from, what their customs are. But then the movie got a lot deeper and it talked more about a struggle of fitting into a society where you don't fit anywhere. You don't white, you're not black, you're not Indian, you're not. There's nothing that
No,
kind of fits you. You're outside almost, or you
the
feel it.
Travellers are a race apart, aren't they? I mean, and I didn't know about them until the 21st century, to be honest with you. And since I moved in London boxing circles, I actually understood what Travellers were. I remember I saw an advert. I went on a cryology kind of cray pilgrimage in my early 20s, so you can forgive me for being naive enough to actually want to undertake such a thing. But I went through a period of fascination with the Cray twins, and I went around all those Bethnal Green and Whitechapel pubs to which they had history in. And
Mm.
the Carpenter's Arms on Cheshire Street, near the Repton Boxing Club, it had a sign saying, I'm talking early 90s, 1993, it had a sign saying no travellers, at the thing. And I thought they meant the New Age travellers, like, the slightly, the
Backpackers.
free, yeah, the free party people with the
Yeah, yeah,
didgeridoos and
yeah.
the love cabbage symbols, and the rave parties. But obviously they didn't mean that. But I didn't know. But what I learned certainly in the 21st century, my involvements with boxing clubs like Angel ABC and Repton Boxing Club, that the Travellers really were like an alternative race apart who their culture owes very little to our mainstream society.
I mean, if you go back far enough, they originally the original Roma people would come from India, where they left when there were warring states, and they started traveling towards Europe. But they were always looked at as a plague on society, as scum, as vermin. Even like during the Holocaust. They were also put into concentration camps, and a lot of them were wiped out doing
Do you
that.
know Jimmy Carr? Were you aware when Jimmy Carr made an off-color joke about that?
Yeah. I remember when that happened, and he was in a bit of bother as well.
He seems to be
It's-
uncancelable, Jimmy Carr, because it didn't really affect his momentum. But he did make a joke about it. I'm not going to repeat it here. I'm tempted to repeat it because I saw the funny side of it, but it didn't go down tremendously well with the traveller community. Let's put it that way.
but the thing is, like, one thing I will say about the traveler community is that their customs have remained quite strong. Like they're dwindling in numbers, but they are a very strong community. There's a lot of things that we don't understand because we don't come from their way of
Yeah,
living, but it shouldn't be disrespected in any way. It's the same as if you wouldn't go on stage and take the piss out of Hindus because
no,
you get you messed up, right? But if you look at society, we are allowed to say a lot of words that's derogatory towards the travelers and the gypsies without getting much repercussions. It's fine. Like I've spoken to many business owners that are like, oh, I'd never let travelers in here. They always fuck up things and blah 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 blah.
yeah, yeah.
But you can't judge a whole people based on a few people's actions.
I also thought, the Big Fat Gypsy Wedding series of several years ago.
Mm.
I didn't really watch it, to be honest with you, but the impression I got was there was a degree of lampooning and snickering, like they were being paraded. That culture was being presented and paraded for amusement rather than for any kind of serious
No, you know what?
empathy or empathetic understanding.
I'll always give something like a TV show or like if you're showing a certain community, you're not going to show the boring parts of them, right? You're not going to show the
Yeah,
most mundane weddings where they don't have enough money or they
yeah,
make a small little show. They will show the biggest ones. Like if you've ever seen any Indian weddings shown on TV, or if you've ever seen like an African wedding, it's like the biggest thing ever. There's like 5,000 people and loads of food. But it's very that is a huge part of it, but there's also very few people that can afford such a bombastic party. Same with like if you
yeah.
went to like if you watch something like my which is the community that has massive weddings. There's Indians, Pakistanis, as normal, and then there's the Africans have huge weddings, and then you've got the ultra rich. Like if you look at the ultra rich of the world, do you remember the TV show My Sweet 16?
I only by name rather than actually watching it, but I remember it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was basically like American rich kids that were paraded around and they're like getting a
yeah.
Mercedes.
Because your sweet 16 is like a rite of passage for a 16-year-old, right?
Yeah,
That's what happens. You have a party to commemorate the fact that you're 16, which kind of means, well,
because
you're still a teenager.
in those days you came of age then you were married off, so it was a big deal when you were 16. But nowadays, what do you get when you're 16?
I don't think you can do anything, can you?
I mean, you
You're
get the
allowed
age
to
of
have
consent.
heterosexual
Yeah,
sex.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You can't do anything else. You can't drink, you can't vote, you can't drive. I mean, at least here in America, you can drive. So
But in
it's a
any case, so going back to Ron Barrow and the script,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was interesting because we came into contact because a mutual friend by the name of Matthew Hurst, who is a Greenford-based professional boxing trainer.
Mm.
I think you must have said to him, "Do you know an older guy who's an
No.
ex-boxer or someone who?"
He got in touch with me via Facebook because Facebook became my place to cast for people. Like I had
Yeah,
enough fighters. I needed people that were of more of a boxing background, pure boxing, because I had enough MMA fighters wanting to be in the movie and try acting, but I wanted someone that was pure boxing. Like you are, like in all words, the best cast I have because I can almost picture as I was writing. I think I was almost writing someone like you, like an
okay.
older man who's been in the world. You respect boxing so much. Even when we were doing the scene with the headbutt, you're like, you've never headbutt anyone because it's
And
so
that's
again.
why I made it. Yeah, for anyone who's wondering what that is, there's a lot of fight scenes in the movie, and most of them are fisticuffs and boxing based scenes, but there is other stuff more owes more to street fighting, etc. And I had to headbutt the character who plays my daughter's new boyfriend, who I don't approve of, and I had to headbutt him, and I just had to go. I think we tried one, which I remember thinking was a bit lame,
You
and
were
the next
so
one I
far
thought,
away. It was like, oh,
yeah.
but this one.
So then I put a bit more gusto into it, and I knew as soon as I'd done it that I'd connected, and I could see his head swelling really rapidly, like the size of a small egg, a mini egg, like like Cadbury's mini egg type thing. And he
Ah.
knew, he could tell as well. And he said, "Am I cut? Have I got a bruise? Is it swelling?" And I'm like, "It is swelling. Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't. I just wanted to make it look believable, but thankfully, all's well that ends well. We got that shot.
I mean, that's all I cared about. When he got hit, I was like, did we get the shot?
And people like years ago, I remember as a kid reading interviews with Sylvester Stallone, who would speak about the Rocky movies, and he said, you know what? After Rocky 3, he initially said he wasn't necessarily, didn't think he was going to make any more. And one of the things he said was, some of the punches are for real, and I've had enough, to be honest. And I think if we looked at, I don't know about martial arts films like Bruce Lee films and Enter the Dragon, but I think a lot of these films over the years that we know and love that are combat sports based or boxing based, there probably was some real punches and real contact in the mix.
Like if you look at any of the Jackie Chan movies, he wrecked his body. He wrecked his entire body. He'd broken every rib. He'd been punched in the face multiple times. It's like we can do it. We can do it with camera angles, but we don't we don't want people to get hit. But sometimes in the way of things, if a person doesn't move at the right time, it can just catch. And we're not throwing with intent. So it's just like little bits.
Did you hear that Ernie Shavers, the monstrous puncher, who was never a world champion because he shared an era with great fighters like Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes, and that was his 2 title shots he got was against Ali and Holmes. So Shavers was one of those really honourable contenders who was kind of, you couldn't call him an all-time great, but he's definitely one of the greatest punchers in boxing history, and somebody who would have been a world champion today, maybe a couple of times over. But he auditioned for the part of Clubber Lang in Rocky 3. And I think they say he broke Stallone's ribs, so they said that was never going to happen, because he just didn't know how to play the game when it came to auditioning.
But he also said he didn't throw it with intent. He said he threw it like half or quarter of the power he would. But if you've never taken a punch like that, you can't deal with it. And I heard a rumor that Ernie Shavers was the one that had played a part in like hurting Muhammad Ali in a way where he didn't ever recover from it.
Well, do you know what? I mean, some of those latter Ali fights and 15 rounders, like the one with Shavers, it wasn't doing him any favors because his legs had not gone, but his legs had dissipated, so he couldn't move as much as he used to. He'd become more fond or reliant on laying on the ropes and absorbing punishment and letting guys get a little tired. They called it the rope-a-dope iconically against George Foreman. But so Ali was taking more shots in his later career. In the mid-70s, he was taking more shots. And the fight with Ernie Shavers, it was probably the last time Ali was it was probably the last time Ali really had a great performance in him when he rose to the occasion. He took some hellacious shots off Ernie Shavers. And he rebounded. He took some hellacious shots in the 15th round, but he rallied to win the 15th round. And I think it was after that fight, Ferdy Pacheco, who was known as the fight doctor, who had been Ali's physician, his personal physician since the 1960s, since before he won the world championship against Sonny Liston. And he said, "I'm out, guys. I cannot be involved with this anymore." He said, "If you keep going, he's going to end up with Parkinson's or mid-brain damage, which is exactly like Parkinson's." And he said he wrote letters to Angelo Dundee, who Ferdy said he was very close to. Also, he said Angie was the godfather to one of his children, or vice versa. He said, but they were in the business of keeping the golden goose alive. You could. People say, Jay, that the Foreman fight damaged Ali and is responsible for his latter condition, but he took a lot of body shots off Foreman. He didn't take a lot of headshots.
No, he didn't, because he
was winning the fight, by the way.
With that. Yeah, because
he was winning the fight. Ali was ahead on all 3 cards when he stopped George, and he was rightfully so. Ali was dictating that fight and winning it. But yes, he was shipping some heavy leather to the body when and I believe he was urinating blood for a few weeks afterwards. All the rest of it. But ultimately, Ali, he started at 12 and he stopped at 40. He fought some of the hardest most legendary punchers in the history of heavyweight boxing. And he took too many shots. And you know what else, Jay? It's the sparring too. It's the work you do in the gym.
That's what I was gonna get at, because what I'm finding, like, I've done combat sports for 10 years, which is a fraction of what you've probably done, and it's what I've seen over the time is that you're not really injured in the fights per se.
Yeah.
You come in dehydrated, you come in after cutting weight or having a crazy camp where you're training like a madman. You have a week when you rest, and then you're just straight into the fire. And
Yeah.
the way that weight cutting is done now, and the way that they did 15 rounds back then, and there was no real science to keep the fighters safe. So there were a lot of people that just ended up crippled by the time they
Yeah.
were in their middle ages. Like, I'd say from 35 to 45, they were done. Like, a great example, like, going back to Ron Barrow, that's why I wanted to show the King as someone that is dealing with damage, that can't let go of that.
Yeah, because you know what's interesting, the trailer, and I'm remiss, by the way, I apologise. I meant to queue up the trailer in this StreamYard, and I thought I'd give people a little preview early in the show, but I forgot to do that. But that trailer that you made, that I've shared on my social media, and has gone down pretty well. People saying I can't. One guy said he watched it 20 times because he loves that bit at the end where I say, "Take the crown off my fucking head."
Yeah.
But you know what? One guy, a Russian friend of mine and former client, said to me, "You had me fooled." I thought, "How's Ben got so old and slow?" And he said, "You had me fooled." I was like, "What's happened to him?" He said, "Then I realised you were acting. You know, when I'm hitting the bag and getting puffed out,
Yeah,
you told me to be breathing heavy and all the rest of it." And I explained that you said there's strictly no white sugar style whatsoever. You wanted an older, slow George Foreman kind of vibe from me. But he said he was really impressed with it because he said that's really good. I really thought you looked like you'd got old overnight, which was kind of cool.
I mean, it's a credit to, like, working with you. I can see that your acting chops are there. Like, some of the scenes that we filmed have been really uncomfortable and really, like, they feel real more than they are.
Like, it feels like real domestic violence and toxicity.
Yeah. I mean, like, because I'm so close to it. Like, the cameras that we have are pretty crappy, and like the lens that I have is, I have a single lens, and we're just going to do it with that. I'm almost in your face when you're doing these things, so it feels like I'm with you while you do them. And sometimes it doesn't even feel like acting; it just feels like I'm in a situation where I'm capturing this. And
which I must admit, when I
hear.
saw back the scene of me and Oshin, Tom, the actor's name is Oshin, is my son. For the benefit again of people who are watching this show, my name is Rowan, King of the Gypsies, but ready for the taking, an alcoholic control freak to boot. I have a son who I have a dysfunctional relationship with. Like, all my relationships are dysfunctional, including the one with my son, who I really love to death, but I've got issues in and around him and everything else. The scene when we're arguing outside of the State of Mind gym in Hammersmith that we shot, I looked at that back and it didn't look like me. It looked like somebody else, and it looked like a real argument. It looked like a
Do you
real.
remember the people watching? They were like, "Oh, we thought it was a real fight," even though I was there with the camera the whole
Yeah.
time.
There was a young family. There was a couple with a young child with pigtails standing on a wall watching us, quite in awe. And we were swearing, saying "fuck you" and you know, "fuck off" and all this. And there's a little girl who looks about 6 watching, and we said, "Sorry, this is not a PG." And they said, "No, it's really good. We thought it was real for a minute." So that was quite nice too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm finding with this is, like, at the start, I really thought I'd bitten off more than I could chew. Like, I was struggling. I was struggling because I'm not a film student. I've never done anything like this before. I've made a few short movies. Taking on a project this big and then seeing it kind of fail at times, especially when I'm like, I need you guys to do it this way, but it's not going the way that I can see it in my head.
Yeah.
On, like, I think the 7th day of shooting, I was like, I might have to just say I'm not qualified for this and try and hand it off to someone better.
Yeah.
But when we started having more successes, when I took over as the camera person and I was able to do the vision that was in my head, it's become easier, and everyone's kind of like playing their part really well. Like, the family dynamic, flawless.
Yeah, and I must admit, it's interesting for me because I feel like I am actually acting finally. I've done not loads, but I've done bits over the years whether it's a Mitsubishi commercial, whether it's a bit part in Run Fat Boy Run, um, being featured in a kind of BBC Three lifestyle type show called Bashing Booze Birds, where I had to spar with a drunk lady who was paralytic, and we had to test her testosterone levels, etc., etc. A couple of other parts here and there. Bloody Lip, obviously, the independent film that did quite well. But I always felt I was pretty typecast and wooden in it, and not really coming out of my kind of deadpan hard man shell. Whereas
Mm,
this one, even though I am playing a hard man, obviously,
mm.
I do feel like I'm finally getting to act, and I'm actually a bit more comfortable doing it finally at this age. So it's been really, I'm really grateful for the opportunity you guys have given me, because I don't think I've ever really acted before. I think I've just been in stuff. You know, you see the distinction. You know.
Yeah. I mean, what was really interesting is that I liked when you switched, when you were with Harry, the kid,
Yeah.
Sanchez.
Okay. Yeah.
Like when you switch from I'm a hard man who hates his son and he's an idiot to like, no, it's my grandson. Oh, we're gonna do some
Yeah.
boxing together. And then watching that scene back, I was like, oh, it feels like if it feels real. It feels like you're not
Yeah.
acting to say
It's
it's there.
yeah, and that's good. So people are saying that when I've shared the trailer, certainly the other day, people are saying, when can we see this and what platform will it be on? And I explained that we're doing it, we're white knuckling it, and that once we've finished and got it in the can, we will have a premiere, certainly. But after
Yeah.
that, that's when we start to promote. That's when you start to promote and market the film to see what you can do with it, and that's actually quite a common process, isn't it, in the independent film world? That you
I,
make it first and then you see if you can sell it, right?
I don't know, man. Like what I'm doing right now is just first steps. Like first steps first. It is to make it, edit it, and then what I'll do is I'll cut a few trailers together. I'll put them out on social media. I'll talk to key people. I want to get it into a cinema so we can have like a nice screening for everyone involved and invite a few young people to encourage them to make something, even if they don't get funding, even if they don't get anything. It's about making something to prove your concept, is to prove you can. You don't have to
Yeah,
wait. That's the biggest idea with this movie, is to encourage people who already probably go to film school, who have all the equipment but are scared because they don't have funding and
yeah,
they won't make their dream come true. And I want to show them like all you need is good people, a camera, you could even use your phone, and to make something. Now the next step would be, I'm looking at Ealing Project Cinema that have quoted me a price, but I'm also going to look at other cinemas that maybe will just have us to showcase something that's quite unique in my
yeah.
eyes.
Kung Kao, by the way, has said that Lee McDonald, who played Zamo in Grange Hill, he said he was originally a boxer from Lion ABC in Hoxton, and
Oh,
then he
wow.
went on to Grange Hill and the Bill later on. And Zamo was, I mean, you're obviously but 20 years younger than me, but Zamo was an iconic figure to my age group in
Mm.
Grange Hill, the school drama that was on at about 4:30 or whatever when we got home on a whatever evening of the week it was. But Zamo apparently was a really decent boxer. I did see him once box on something called Henry Cooper's Golden Belt, which was a really cool intercity competition tournament for junior amateur boxers. That it'd be South London versus Manchester and North London versus Newcastle and Birmingham versus Glasgow and all that kind of thing. Zamo boxed for, I guess it would have been South London. One time on this show, and he was decent. Could hold his hands up, and he already had quite a big air of celebrity amongst his fellow boxers actually on this show, because everybody knew him from Grange Hill. The guy from Minder was an ex-boxer too. Are you saying Terry McCann was an ex-boxer? To be honest with you, Kung, I'm glad we've gone in this direction as well as we
Yeah.
jump back and forth, because to me, Terry McCann, Dennis Waterman looks pretty useless as a boxer to me. His brother. His brother, Peter Waterman, was European welterweight champion, and he actually
Oh,
fought the
wow.
great Kid Gavilan. Peter Waterman was a genuine professional boxing champion. Dennis, to me, doesn't look too clever. I see them scenes, some of them shot in the iconic Repton Boxing Club. He doesn't look too clever to me, I must admit. I can tell who's boxing, who hasn't. Ray Winston, on the other hand, yes, was a decent boxer with Repton
Oh,
ABC.
yeah.
Ray could fight, yes.
Was the little guy? What's his name? His name's like Bob. Not Bob. What's his name? He was really hairy.
Bob Hoskins.
Yes. Was he a boxer? Because he made a really, really amazing movie. It was black and white. I forget the name. I think it was 24/7. that was a really, really good movie about like
He might have done a bit, Bob. I'd need to check that. I get in my heart, in my gut, I feel non-boxer more than boxer with Bob
yeah.
because there is a. You can tell somehow. You can normally read people. I'm not normally surprised, although occasionally I've been surprised to find people had certainly a
What
big extensive amateur career behind them when I never realised. But let me check after the show. Can someone
yeah.
tell us who's watching now if you know if Bob Hoskins had a credible boxing resume in the amateurs at least?
What I was gonna say is that like working with actors and then working with boxers who want to act, I've been having a lot. Oh, he didn't box.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, according to Congo, I think he probably knows what he's saying. Yeah, but go on.
Yeah. Because I was saying like working with boxers and actors, I'm actually finding that the boxers are a lot better at acting than the actors are
Do you know
because
what? There was a film once. There was a documentary initially called Fighters by a director called Ron Peck, a filmmaker called Ron Peck.
hmm,
He did it in 1990, and he set it around the Royal Oak. Sorry, no, the Peacock Gym in Canning Town. When the trainer Jimmy Tibbs is mostly featured. Dean Powell, who was Frank Warren's matchmaker for many a year until he actually tragically committed suicide back in 2013, I believe it was. But in any case, they shot this thing about these various East London boxers, including Mark Kaler, Jason Rowland, Bradley Stone, who tragically died in his 1994 fight with Richie Wenton, Bradley Stone was the statue was made as a tribute to him outside the Peacock Gym, which still
hmm,
stands there to this day. But regardless of that, the documentary was a really good piece called Fighters. But what was even more interesting, I think, was they made, as well as making the documentary, they made this spin-off action movie drama which they kind of ad-libbed and sort of winged it, and it was called Real Money. And you know what? Jimmy Tibbs was an absolute the iconic boxing trainer was an absolute revelation in it. Jimmy was brilliant. I mean, you'd have to see it sometime.
yeah, yeah, please
But
do.
Jimmy was absolutely brilliant. There's a guy called Jimmy Flint who was formerly known as the Whopping Assassin, who was British featherweight champion. He was great too,
Hmm.
but Jimmy was a bit of an actor anyway and has done bits over the years. But Jimmy Tibbs had no training. Jimmy Flint was kind of had a card in the acting guild, but they were both brilliant, and so were some of the other guys, And when I'm only talking about characters from the gym, but it's a really good effort by everybody involved.
I think if they're in a comfortable environment where they are doing something that they love, like boxing, if you put boxers in a boxing movie, they play the role so well. You can be like, you're a tough guy and you're a pussy, and they'll play it without
Yeah.
any qualms. When we put Ed Chatley, he was in Marching Powder. He did a small role in that movie, and he's done like a thug role in this one. It's like he's done it his whole life.
Yeah.
Like he has a scene with Tom, and the scene is really intense. Like he's only on screen for maybe 4 minutes maximum, but I was like, wow, without any practice. Like that's the one unique thing about our movie is no one's had any rehearsal time really with each other. We turn
No,
up and I go, you
and
do
nail
this
it.
scene now.
And to be honest, I'm getting to the point where that's become my method because the first one had hardly had any sleep before when we filmed the pub car park scenes.
Hmm.
I hardly had any sleep the night before, and because that went quite well, I thought, well, that must be the way to do it, where you're feeling quite emotional but quite inspired. I thought I tried to do it like that without too much rehearsal, and it becomes the way of doing it. But no, it's been a lot of fun so far. To
I
be
mean, the
involved
final
with it. I
fight
think,
scenes are coming. That's when it's going to be hard. Like we've got a long day of fights on the 29th. So
yeah,
that's going to be really interesting where we film all of our main fights and put them in the movie. I think that's when we'll do all the pictures for the trailer. I mean, the posters and stuff as well, because you'll be the most grizzled up and fun
yeah,
looking.
yeah. That's when the makeup artists come in. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's funny. I put that post because I'm hitting the bag. I was punching the bag with bare fists for a long time when we were getting. It might not be a long time in the movie, but it was a long time in reality while we were getting those scenes. And when I posted the picture of my knuckles all messed up by the makeup artist, Simon,
Simon, yeah,
what I'd actually, there were so many people saying to me, "What have you done that for? Or why didn't you use reps and all that?" And I had to explain it was just makeup. But I can
yeah,
tell you that there is a real mark that was incurred from that. It's only
real
one, but
damage.
that one's for real, yeah. And
Yeah,
it felt like it hurt worse because of the appearance of the other ones. It felt like I was in a bad way. And when you get just a bit of pain from one minor wound, it feels
you
worse
think
when
they're
you,
on all of them?
yeah.
No,
But
he's done such a cool job. Like some of the damage, I'm like, oh, is that for real? And the guy is a wizard with it. It's like he can just paint away, and suddenly it looks
yeah,
bad. But hey,
yeah.
I think the team's really come together. From where I started, it was just me and Tom at the start, and now we've got a team of about almost 40 people that are in this movie, and
Committed, yeah,
yeah, committed.
exactly.
That's the thing, turning up, and we're moving forwards. Like I really didn't think it'd go this well. You know, when you just go, let's do it, let's
It
try.
feel it feels right, doesn't it? And it, like you say, it feels like we've got a chemistry with like with Tom and Trish, and also Kat,
Yeah, yeah,
who plays my daughter in the
mm,
movie. It does feel like we've got this vibe that I see sometimes when I saw Love, Honor and Obey, for instance, and they do this funny thing where they all sing, the cast sing through the avenues and alleyways, the Tony Christie number at the start of the movie, and they've
yeah,
all got different lines, singing it in their own distinctive way, including Sadie Frost, who says it really sings a bit really minxishly. And they look like a bunch of people who really enjoyed making a movie together and had that family chemistry. And I think we got a bit of that on our set as well.
yeah, yeah. No, as in it's come together. I keep telling Tom and what do you call it, and Kat and guys about this. I was like, the way you guys work as a family, I didn't think would work so
It's going to
well
happen.
because
Yeah.
initially I was like, do they look enough like each other? Is it because
And
Trish looks like Tom?
we don't even sound the same.
Yeah, yeah.
But it still seems to work, I feel. Anyway, I mean, the ultimate judgment will be when I see it all back. But, it does seem to
Yeah,
work.
I mean, I'm watching it as we go, right? I look at all the rushes when I come home, and I see what it's turning into. And initially, it was turning into a bunch of crap, and I was like, I want to discard this all. But now it's actually shaping into a film. That's why I could
Yeah.
chip a trailer together.
Yeah.
And
Because you feel confident enough to do that and say that, watch this space.
yeah,
Conga's just asked, I didn't see this movie, you might have
oh,
done,
Calcium
Jay.
Kid, I loved it. It was a
Go
really
on.
good movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's with Orlando Bloom.
Yeah.
And he's a milkman, and he's got really strong bones, so they make him a fighter. I watched it ages ago. It's a really funny movie.
Yeah.
Give it a
I
go.
need to watch that because I seem to remember when I was at Angel Boxing Club in 2003, 2004, there was a kid there who boxed, who was a really skinny kid who was an actor, and I think he got a little part in EastEnders. But they said he was up for a role in the Calcium Kid as well because
Oh, really?
that was the direction he was looking to go in, but more than boxing really. But because the fighter down there at Angel from that period who really made it was John Ryder. Went on to fight Canelo Alvarez in Guadalajara in front of 60,000 people or whatever it might have been. But I do remember the other kid Phil as well, who enjoyed boxing, but had his sights set on being a big famous actor. And I don't know if he actually got the role in the Calcium Kid or not. But
So the
I
Calcium
mean,
Kid went to Orlando Bloom. I think there were a lot of other actors that were in it, but I don't remember any of the other names too well. But the Calcium
yeah,
Kid is a good watch because what I've done over the last 4 months is I've just watched boxing movies back to back, back to back, back to back. I've watched everything from Champ all the way up to Fighter to
yeah.
the
Let's
newer
talk about some
Rambo
of
stuff.
those. The
Was that
Champ.
right?
I haven't seen that since I was a kid.
Yeah.
All I know is it's Faye Dunaway, right?
Yes.
And
It's in a movie
Warren.
from the 60s, I think.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, it is a color movie though, isn't it? It's a color movie, I believe.
No, 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 no. It's a black and white. It's a black and white movie, I think.
The
Is
Champ
it
is.
color?
You sure?
Champ, 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 champ. Champ should be black and white. I watched it in black and white.
And so somebody dies at the end, right?
Yeah, the champ.
I could have sworn that was color. I really could. The promotion's all in color. Honest to God,
Yeah,
the
but
posters
that's
are in
how
color.
movies of the past were, right? They were painted and things, so it would be in color and then it'd be in black.
Yeah,
I watched it in black and white because I watched it recently. Really good
yeah.
movie. Have you seen the Requiem of a Heavyweight?
Requiem for a Heavyweight. Yeah, I have. And you've got You got,
That's
I believe, the
amazing.
young Cassius Clay at the start of that film, right? Or is he in The
With
Harder They Fall? Maybe young Cassius Clay's in The Harder They Fall by Rod
the Hard Day
Steiger,
Fall, yeah.
perhaps.
And then the movie you recommended about Jack Johnson, I watched that as well.
That's called The Great White Hope with
Yes.
James Earl Jones. That is a good movie. James Earl Jones does a blinding job as Jack Johnson. He
Yeah,
really
but I
does.
don't think his color suits him though, because Jack Johnson was black.
And he's
They
quite light,
picked
isn't he,
a
James
very
Earl Jones?
light colored, yeah, black man. So
he's also a little on the kind of hirsute side as well. He's a little hairy for Jack Johnson.
yeah.
Jack
Jack
Johnson
Johnson
was,
was, yeah,
you know,
he was big, he was stacked. I think they should make another Jack Johnson movie, but they shouldn't go down the route of yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you're not talking about the champ. You're talking about the champion. There is a
The
important
champion,
difference.
yeah, no,
The
there's
champ
champ.
is a color movie with Faye Dunaway in it and all that, but the
Right, yes,
champion, Kirk
it is.
Douglas, yeah, that's
That's
a
the
different
one.
one.
Maybe I'm talking
Yeah.
about the champion.
I think you are. Yeah,
Like
exactly.
when they all
Blonde-haired
meld,
John Voight played the yeah. What's
yeah,
Bruce saying? Bruce says Clay is in the opening scene of Requiem of a Heavyweight. I thought he was.
yeah,
Young
yeah.
Cassius Clay's in the opening scene. Yeah.
Oh, man, you know when you watch like 50 boxing movies in one,
Yeah.
they condense into this block that's all the same by the end. Right.
Yeah.
All I was trying to get at was I wanted to show boxing as well as I could on film with the budget that we have. Because a
Yeah.
lot of the times we see the same boxing tropes again and again and again,
We
which I
do.
know why. Because it's easy.
Because they
But
work. Yeah.
yeah, they work and they look cool. But boxing isn't like that. It
No,
isn't.
it's not like that. And what you know what? Obviously, I've watched it many times before, but I stuck Raging Bull on again the other night because it's free on Amazon at the minute. If you get Amazon Prime, it's free anyway. And where do you stand on Raging Bull?
I think cinematically, it's a very it's a great movie cinematically, but in terms of the boxing per se, they've got a lot of artistic free play
License.
with it. Yeah, license where they've done a lot of things like and a
Yeah.
lot of blood and spray and
I think they captured a '50s vibe fantastically well, and
yeah,
some of those shots and angles are beautiful, quite simply, cinematically, like you say. But
yeah,
you know what? Like you say, some of it is exaggerated and not overly convincing, and they make Sugar Ray Robinson look like 17 Shades of Shit. They
yeah,
really do. He's
yeah.
not even good looking.
No,
It's just
that's
a
the thing.
really bad representation of Ray Robinson.
He looks like Michael Jackson in Thriller when he turns into the zombie.
Yeah,
Like
exactly
really,
that. He does. And
yeah,
you can't really expect an actor to replicate the skills of Sugar Ray Robinson, believably in his prime. But they could have done a little bit better than that, like.
I mean, he's a phenom. Like, watch, like as I was telling you, like I love what's his face, Wilfred Benitez, and I was
Yeah,
watching Wilfred Benitez versus Sugar Ray Leonard or Robert
yeah.
Sugar Ray Robinson, right?
No, Leonard.
Yeah, he fought Sugar Ray Leonard, and the way that man moves is incredibly fast and incredibly graceful. But Benitez, to credit where credit's due, like he was amazing as well. He was beaten
Yeah,
by Robinson, wasn't he?
yeah,
In that
yeah. I
match.
mean, that fight was November 30th, 1979, at Caesar's
Mm,
Palace, Las Vegas, and Sugar Ray was undefeated at the time, as was Benitez.
yeah,
But Ray said at that time, I think he had a little more than I had, but I had that youthful desire and that insistence upon not being denied, no matter what. Whereas Benitez didn't quite have that work ethic and that attitude.
but Benitez had started partying at that stage, right? Was he
Yes,
world
yeah.
champ? He was world champ at that stage,
He was
right?
well. It was already his second world title because he first won a world championship in March. The anniversary came up very recently. It was March the 5th, 1976, against
Oh wow,
Antonio
yeah.
Cervantes, the great Colombian fighter.
He was the first. He was like the youngest, right? He was the
The
youngest of
youngest,
all
and,
that.
and I don't suppose it'll ever change. He was 17 years old when he beat Antonio Cervantes.
But they changed his birth certificate as well, right? So he would have been 16 technically.
Nah, do you know what? No, he wasn't. He was 17. That was his real birth.
Right.
They tried to make him older than he was. You will look at fights. For instance, there's some amateur footage of Benitez from 1973 in
Yeah.
the what's it called? Trying to think what it's called. I think it's the United States Boxing Championships or something. Even though he's from Puerto Rico, he's competing in them. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
US tournament, but he's fighting a Canadian, so it's like North American boxing tournament, right?
Mm.
And they say Wilfred Benitez, 17 years old. He's a student from St. Just in in Puerto Rico, in Carolina, Puerto Rico.
Mm.
And he wasn't 17. He was like fucking 13, fighting a
Yeah, yeah,
19-year-old
yeah. He
Canadian
started fighting
international.
at 5 years old, right? Because of his father. His
Yeah,
father chucked him in
yeah.
to with the neighborhood boys so he could show off his
Yeah,
boxing.
his father, exactly. I mean, if anybody wants to read about the legend of Wilfred Benitez and the career, the warts and all story, I've got it here. This is the hardback version of the book I wrote about him. There's only one biography of Wilfred Benitez in existence, and this is it. It's called The Fifth King, written by myself. And yeah, I mean, I hear that the sister, Wilfred's sister, does a saintly job of caring for Wilfred around the clock, 24/7,
Is he
and has
still
done for
alive?
many years. He's still alive. He lives in they live in Freeport, Illinois. He was living in Chicago. Now they live in Freeport, Illinois,
Like,
and he lives very close to Gerald McClellan and his sister Lisa McClellan, and the two sisters are very much pelled up in their role as constant carers for the fallen warriors, But I hear that Yvonne Benitez didn't like the book because she thought the father was portrayed unsympathetically in it, but he does appear to have been one of those draconian fathers.
but the father was like, if you look at like what he did to his children, and then what he did with the money that the boy earned. Like he
Yeah.
was only 20, what, he was 24 when his brain started to shift already. By the
I would
time
have
he
said
was
so, yeah. I mean, I think he was certainly shot to pieces at the age of 25. He was
like,
shot to
but then he
pieces.
continued fighting. He fought until he was like 35, didn't he?
Yeah,
Where
he
he just
carried on fighting. He was still fighting in the 90s,
mm,
and it was something that it was a sad story. And, he certainly needed saving for himself a little earlier, but ultimately he probably took too much punishment as a teenager in the gym, with sparring
yeah.
with fully fledged professionals and fully grown men.
And the thing is, it's like with boxing, I really want to show this in the movie best I can. Is that at some stage we all have to consider every combat artist in the world, combat sports person needs to realize that there is a point where you need to hang up your gloves. Not for you're not a warrior if you hang up your gloves. You've given it all you can. But there's a point where we all need to go. Okay, I'm good because
Yeah,
the longer we leave it, but
I
like
mean,
if
I think
go on.
if you look at the history of boxing, there's actually quite a few champions who've managed to call time on their careers at that point. Gene Tunney would be one of them from back in the day, the guy that beat Jack Dempsey in 1926. You've
Mm.
got Rocky Marciano is another one who retired in 1956 after having never lost a fight. He was 49 fights without defeat. Who else? Marvin Hagler. Oh, okay, he lost his last fight to Sugar Ray Leonard, but he still walked away from it and spurned any offers of a rematch and
Hagler
avoided any
passed away
temptation.
recently, right?
Hagler
Hagler passed
passed
away.
away quite recently. Yeah, I think it was 2021. He passed away.
Yeah.
Quite mysterious, He was he was dead. His wife was the only person present. She said she knew the
Mm.
reason, but there was never any cause of death given. I
Yeah.
heard what it was, and it was nothing scandalous. But I did hear there's a guest on here recently, a guy called Michael Colbert who fought Roberto Duran, and
Mm.
Duran was his idol, but he was a gym mate of Hagler's for many years at the Petronelli's gym in Boston, and he told me what it was, or what he told me what he heard it was anyway, and it was something that kills a lot of people, but there was never any official cause listed anywhere,
Yeah. I mean,
in
I
mainstream.
love like combat sports, but boxing does have the most amount of deaths in the ring, I'd say, out of any combat sports.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's
okay.
I mean, boxers don't seem to live long lives as other factions of society. Fighters, if you look at a certain
Fighters
era,
as a
even the
whole.
1980s heavyweights, an awful lot of those guys are gone and no longer
Yeah.
with us. From Michael Dokes to John Tate, and people who should still be alive, and they're not.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, that's with all
Greg
sports.
Page.
Yeah. It's sports, no matter what sport you look at, unless it's swimming. I don't see many sports people coming out of it unharmed or unfazed.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
if you do a sport professionally, you're going to look at a shortened lifespan. because
Maybe so, because you're using up more of your credits. I suppose you're using up your energy bar more.
yeah,
Bruce Guest Boxing, Jazz and Moore has made the point that Ali, Norton, Foreman all left boxing with a loss. Fraser left with a draw. Yeah, I mean, Joe Fraser came back in 1981 to fight a guy called Jumbo Cummings, who later was known to British fans because he nearly knocked Frank Bruno out, nearly caused an upset back in Frank's early career. But yeah, Fraser struggled to get a generous draw with a guy called Jumbo Cummings, who was a guy who'd been serving umpteen years for murder in prison. Came out and had one of those real jailhouse kind of prison jailhouse physiques,
stacked.
exercise yard physiques, But
Yeah.
but Fraser did, yeah. Fraser came back. I think most fighters,
This-
interestingly enough, Michael Elijah, who used to be one of my co-anchors on this podcast, when people say, "Oh, I'd like to see Usyk retire now," or "I'd like to see someone else retire," when they talk about whether it's Canelo or whoever, that doesn't fit his value base. He believes more in this law of the jungle: kill or be killed, dog eat dog thing. He says, "No, you do it till the wheel falls off. You do it till you can't do it anymore."
this is
And he's an intelligent guy too, and he still believes that.
this is the question I wanted to pose to you. Like, what do you think? I think it's more in men than it is in women. Just like as I'm putting a blanket term on it. Do you think it is something innately within us that doesn't want us to stop doing the thing that makes us feel the most powerful?
Inevitably, yeah. I think whatever it is, that your identity becomes wrapped up in something. Sugar Ray Leonard retired with plenty of money initially in 1982
Then
because
he
he had
came
the
back.
detached retina, and he
Yeah,
said, he had alcohol and cocaine issues as well, because he was trying to replace the adulation of boxing, which he couldn't and couldn't find anywhere else. And he said, he had a great job commentating for HBO and CBS, and looking $1 million there in a tuxedo, still young and articulate. And he said, "I'm sitting there and I'm commentating on it." And he said, "What do I want to do? I want to fight. I want to fight." And KO
yeah,
Magazine said, "It does rather take the shine off a title fight when you think that the ring announcer could probably beat up both of the fighters, or he could, because Ray was
yeah.
still young, And then obviously in the end he came back for the Hagler fight, which was to me still the greatest comeback, the greatest one night comeback in boxing history.
That
It
was an
greatly gets
amazing
on
fight.
my yeah,
Really good
it
fight.
greatly gets on my nerves that some people try to pour water on that by suggesting there was a robbery. That Ray won that fight fair and square. I have zero tolerance for anybody who thinks Hagler won that fight. Watch it with me, and you will leave and fucking apologise. And I've done it. I've got taken the most hardcore Hagler advocate. They've watched it with me, even virtually online, and they've admitted, "Sorry, I really didn't see it that way before. I get it now." But but um but Sugar Ray Leonard, yeah, and in the end, he came back. He kept coming back. He was retiring. He said
Yeah,
after
he
the
was
Hagler
murdered
fight,
multiple times, right?
he
I
announced his
mean,
retirement after beating Hagler in April '87. Then he came back again to fight Donny Lalonde, who's actually a good friend of mine these days. Then he came, he continued and fought Tommy Hearns, and most people think he was very lucky to get a draw that time. Then he came back for a third fight with Duran, and he kept going till he got bashed up by Terry Norris, and even that wasn't enough for him. He
no,
came
but
back in 1997 and got beat up by Hector Camacho.
do you think there's no one that can stop a fighter from fighting except the fighter? That's what I always believe. Like, even I work as a sports therapist, and there's lots of times where I have to speak to people about the reality of their injuries, where it's like, okay, is it
Yeah.
time to not do this anymore? But it's also, you can't stop a fighter from fighting. You can't stop anyone from doing something.
Well,
And when people keep
obviously
going on,
the commission can, a regulatory body can, and the
but
British Boxing Board of Control, they have and will certainly, maybe more back in the day, more historically. But Ken Buchanan, the former undisputed lightweight champion from Scotland, one of the greatest fighters that the UK ever produced, the Board of Control wouldn't let him continue. They took his license away when he was still all right. He was over the hill. He was past noon, but he wasn't shot and he wasn't dangerous. He wasn't dangerously in that position, but they wouldn't let him fight, and he had to go on the unlicensed circuit. Which today, when you look at some of the things the board has signed off on in recent years, that is absolutely scandalous. They wouldn't let they denied Ken Buchanan a platform and the right to make his living in the proper code of professional boxing.
we don't know what happens, right? Boxing is notoriously the most corrupt sport. Like, they almost got taken out of the Olympics. It was that
Yeah,
bad. So
yeah,
I would
yeah.
say with boxing, the way it's gone now, I'm in two minds. I know I've gone completely off from the script and stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm in two minds with where I'm at with it. Because there's at one stage there's the influencer boxing scene, which is paying out a lot of money to fighters that were never gonna make it in the pro circuit ever, like ever. And then there's the pro circuit and the amateurs, which is superbly competitive. But younger and younger people are just getting churned out. But that was always the case. So I pose this to you as a fighter who joins a gym now at say age of 16 or 17, which is already late to be a good amateur.
Yeah.
Should they concentrate more on going down the route of influencer boxing, or do you think that's a bubble that's about to pop? Or should they work hard and go towards the pro circuit where they might make millions in Abu Dhabi and all
But
these?
the thing is, I would never encourage anybody to go. I would never speak in favour of the influencer thing. As far as I'm concerned, it's not boxing. It's not my culture. It's not what I represent. It's not what I would chain myself to the railings for. I'm pretty simple like that. So fuck influencer boxing. You know,
Fair.
um, and I what I can do, I can turn you on to real boxing and its rich history and culture, and I can make you feel it's the most important thing in the world. That's my gig. That's what I can do. The other thing, I don't have to hate somebody for being involved with it, but that's where the conversation stops. But having said that, I think I can see the appeal of even white collar boxing compared to amateur boxing because of the glamour and the hype that some of these people do, including my good friend Chrissy Morton, who's ran Bad Boy Promotions for years. And part of
Mm.
the appeal to boxing on those shows is that she sells them a dream and makes them feel special in a way they wouldn't get that kind of treatment in the amateurs. You know, they'd be a
Not
bit
at
more
all.
box standard. You'd have to, even if you get to the Olympics, you wouldn't be made to feel that much of a superstar. So I understand it, I get it. And the other thing I'd say, Jay, is I wouldn't necessarily encourage people to turn professional without thinking about it because it's usually not what it's cracked up to be. And you can ask many a professional boxer who's even boxed at a high level, and they'll tell you that the days they most enjoyed their boxing were the carefree amateur days when it really was about the competition. You might get the odd bad decision and a bit of local or city politics or a bit of international politics. You do get that because that's just the nature of human beings, right? The nature of life. But I think a lot of fighters who really got to the mountaintop will tell you they enjoyed the amateurs more than anything else. So professional
Because then it
boxing,
becomes, does
go
it
on.
become more about the, it becomes more about the money and the politics that come with boxing, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, but not just that, Jay. I mean, obviously, we're in a period of revolution and change in boxing now because not only have you got the Riyadh season and Turkey Al Sheikh, who's become the most important single
Shake
person in
ever.
boxing in the space of 18 months, the space of 12 months, he's become the most important person on the planet with respect to boxing. But not
Mm.
just that, since he's teamed up with Dana White and TKO, and that guy Nick, what's his name, Nick Khan, the other guy. That is going to be a real game changer.
Yeah,
And
you
we've
just
already
one second. Let
seen,
me just pop in my charger.
yeah, and we've already seen a real game changer. So, but having said that, before that situation, and even still in conjunction with that situation, what you have to realize is if you turn pro now, like suppose Tom wanted to turn pro, Tom Sharkey, who plays my son Oshid in the movie. He's 30 years old. He's boxing white collar. Or he's thereabouts, isn't he? Suppose he wanted to turn pro now. He'd have to sell. You have to sell like 100 tickets it always used to be, which these days would be about a standard ticket for a small hall show these days at Bethnal Green or
Forty,
York Hall,
45
Bethnal
quid.
Green or Brentwood Centre or wherever else, Tolworth Leisure Centre. It's about 50 quid these days for a standard ticket, never mind a ringside. So
This,
you have to sell 5 grand's worth of tickets, you understand? Otherwise, they won't put you on the show unless you want to go on the road, they call it. If you go on the road, you're an opponent, your have gloves will travel, and you ain't winning. You might win a couple, but then people will stop phoning you. And so you implicitly there's this sense that you know what your job is, and you're there to take part. You're there to make up the numbers. So I
I
wouldn't
mean,
I
for
wouldn't
me,
encourage people to turn
if I
professional
were to go
necessarily.
pro, it
Second,
would be to be like if I was thinking about a career as a 33-year-old man in boxing, I would look more to be a journeyman somehow. I'd get as many of these little fights and little promotions and things and get like my record up, and then I'd make my money once every month or once every 2 or 3 weeks to go and fight someone for to lose and to
Well,
make some
that's what
money
they
that
do.
way.
I mean, and that's what and some of them, some of them really enjoy it because they still like the spotlight. A guy like Johnny Greaves, who had 100 fights back in the day. And other guys like Peter Buckley had 300 fights. Christian Late had 301. Yeah, and they're relatively recent phenomenons. But they obviously enjoyed it. But someone like Johnny Greaves was a natural born showman, and he loved the antagonism and the kind of leeriness of the other guys' fans who didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah,
And he enjoyed that kind of vibe, and it's a way of it's the definition of who you are, isn't it? It's a form of self-expression. So there's a guy called Jordan Granham these days he's getting on for 150 fights. Maybe he's had even more. And I remember he was a good amateur, and I remember him saying in a dressing room a few years ago, about 2018, I think it was. He just said he was really enjoying it, no pressure, and he was intending to have his 300 if he could have that many pro bouts,
yeah.
because he was making money. So the thing is, the average casual fan in the crowd doesn't realise that guy could have won more fights if he wanted to. I remember a guy called Fonz Alexander boxing a guy that I think he was only 1-0. I think it was James Hawley, who, funny enough, was the kid who got kicked out of the MTK roster for making homophobic remarks. Now, when you look at the kind of shade that was hanging over MTK, the idea that the people were saying that they were gangsters and narco terrorists and everything else. That's what people were saying, by the way. I'm not saying it. I don't need that kind of heat. But it was interesting they disciplined somebody for making homophobic remarks. It was strangely woke behaviour given the context of MTK. But
Yeah.
when James Hawley years ago fought in his second professional fight, I believe it was, he fought Fonz Alexander. They announced Fonz Alexander's record to the crowd, and it was something like, and with 3 wins, 97 losses and 6 draws. Now that just sounds silly. You may as well not
Yeah, yeah.
announce it at all. You may as well just say the very experienced,
Yeah.
Franz Alexander. But there were 2 fellas behind me, and they said, "Imagine that! You'd give up, wouldn't you?" And I felt the need to correct them because I can never keep my big mouth shut. So I said, "Why would you give up when he's making a good income, a good supplementary income, and he enjoys doing it?"
They
And
don't
he's
understand that. They don't understand. Like, this is what I've been finding in combat sports. People who aren't in combat sports think that it's very honest. It's like 2 men go in and 1 man comes out the winner. It isn't that. There is so much business attached to. It's a
yeah,
business. It's a business
because those
before
are
it is a
building
sport.
blocks.
Yeah,
They're
it's a
building blocks
business.
to build a record to put a fighter in a position. And that's the
It's
thing. In the amateurs, you don't get that. Every amateur fight I ever had was on the level. Every one of them. Once in
But
my
then
life have I seen an amateur take
there's
a
also
dive.
stuff there, right? There's always been controversy, even in the amateurs, about this. Like, that's why it was looked at in the Olympics. They were like, it's so corrupt that we might
Yeah, but
have
the
to.
corruption in the Olympics is people bad decisions and things like that. And you had some gender controversies. You never got a controversy about a fighter taking a dive in the Olympics ever. I've never seen that ever.
But
It's all about the
but
judging.
it's
It's all
sport.
about the refereeing and the judging, the officiating.
But it's
Amateurs don't
sport,
turn up
right?
to lose.
But sports is about it, like, if sports brings betting, and when betting gets such a degree,
No, but honestly, you
that's
won't
where
find me one example of an amateur that is rumored to have taken a dive, or I've never seen it in my life.
I'm going to have to do some research on that front, because what I find is that whenever sport
But
becomes
the
so
Olympics
popular.
isn't really like that, and you won't. People don't bet much on amateur boxing. They really don't. They bet on professional boxing. I mean, I'm not saying it never happens, but your biggest amateur controversies in history is stuff like Roy Jones getting robbed blind in the Seoul Olympics in 1998 by the Korean fighter. You had the controversy of Evander Holyfield getting disqualified when he knocked out the New Zealander Kevin Barry on the
Yeah,
break in
yeah, yeah.
1984 Los Angeles Olympics. Find
Mm.
me one amateur, high profile, who is rumoured to have taken a dive or not given his best. I've never seen it.
I'm going to have to research something like this, because for me, the most interesting thing about sports as a whole is the betting aspect. Because without this is why
But I'm saying you don't see a lot of action on the Olympics. You do not see a lot of action on the Olympic amateur boxing betting.
what's that? Sorry.
You don't see a lot of action in amateur boxing betting action. Not
No.
the only
Okay.
time I ever saw it was on the dinner shows when I was boxing as a kid. You'd see punters betting on you or your blue or the red corner.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? I don't see people betting on the Olympics or the European Championships or the Commonwealth Games. I do
I
not
think
see
that's a
it.
business to be started, I think.
Maybe. Well, they'd have to start offering prices. You'd have got a price on Audley Harrison to win the gold medal, for instance. In
Yeah.
2000 in Sydney. But there's not. If you look at betting on boxing, it is. 95% pro, if not more.
Because that's so. Where does the money come from? How do these boxers get paid such large amounts of money? Do you think it comes from
What
betting? Do you think it comes from
what
investment?
boxers? What professional boxers?
Professionals, yeah,
From the TV money, from the
from the
is the
pay-per-view.
biggest gate.
But I'd say it also a huge amount comes from the betting world, doesn't it?
No, none at all. A fighter can't get paid like that. A fight to go back to an era when they got money from betting, you'd have to go back to the 1700s when they had rich aristocratic patrons in the days of James Figg and Jack Broughton and such like, where it was
That's
about
like
side
ancient
stakes.
history of
It was
boxing
all
there.
yeah, it was all about side stakes. These days they get paid from the live gate and
The
from the
pay-per-view.
television revenue. That's how they
Right,
get
right,
paid.
right.
And the pay per view,
Mm.
pay per
No,
view is the biggest source of income for fighters today.
because for me, when a sport is honest, when there isn't money involved, like it's just a
Exactly. Well,
procedure to
so
do.
I'm saying that in the amateurs, there's no money involved. I mean, all
Yeah,
right, they get funding, but that's not the same thing, is it? They don't get
no, no,
purses.
no. Yeah, I mean that's where it would be the most honest. But we've seen. I want to see. Like how football's become. I'm not a huge football fan. I never have been. Never watched it that much. But it's become a stage where we're paying millions and millions of pounds to people that like, it's not an entertaining sport. Maybe I'm not the right person to be talking about football, but it, we would pay them too much, and it becomes more a chore to
That's what
watch.
people say
Not
to.
entertainment.
People say when you've got 11 millionaires on the pitch or 11 multi-millionaires on the pitch, they don't
Yeah,
have that hunger that you need to be to excel.
that's why boxing is exciting. Like it's really hungry men that need to prove them they're men battering the shit out of each other. Like you don't really see too many boxers that are very prim and proper and from a very well-adjusted family coming into the sport and doing very
No,
well.
you don't. I mean, some of them can be very gracious and well comported, but at the same time, we have a culture now in boxing where it's all about this shoving and handbags at press conferences and egg smashing and I saw Teofimo Lopez and Arnold Barbosa the other day. They look like they do auditioning for some Warriors spoof remake with the waistcoats on and no shirt underneath,
Really?
pushing each other and shoving and slapping and
Yeah.
so obviously that kind of goes against what was always in years gone by. Joe Lewis and Max Schmeling would just shake hands wearing suits, and that was Tunney and Dempsey would do the same. I guess Muhammad Ali kind of started the
The
trash
trash talk
talking
era.
and stare downs in a big way, which that's an amazing legacy. And Ali wrote the book on so many things, but at the same time, there is a tedious aspect to it nowadays. And it's not, I mean, I like hype and I like electricity. I like Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank when they signed a contract on Midweek Sports Special to fight each other. You could cut that atmosphere with a knife. The genuine sense of hatred, as the interviewer referred to it, he said there seems a genuine air of hate here. And Eubank said, "I don't hate the man. He's just in my way. He's an obstacle." And Nigel Benn said, "I personally do hate him." So that but the point was they didn't get into it physically. They didn't curse. They didn't swear. They didn't lay a hand on each other. It was almost more pregnant with animosity because you could feel that crackling electrical charge of dislike and tension. You know what I
But
mean?
you know
I
what?
think that was ideal.
What's happened now is through like time and the attention spans and how we're going towards a more theatrical keeping people's attention. It has to be entertainment
Yeah,
straight off the bat. Like if
yeah.
you look at like WWF and pro wrestling, that brought the heel and the baby face. And then same with the Great White Hope and all of that stuff. You always needed a heel and a good guy.
An
And I
angle,
think
yeah. The white hat and the black hat. Yeah,
yeah, we want it. We want it. We want a storyline because a fight's
yeah.
never as exciting as when there's a storyline attached.
Because it's exactly, and if people care about the personalities in the ring, that's when they show up. And even if they happen to be influencers or whatever they are, it's personality based and drama based. That is the stuff of life, and that is what passes for entertainment with us, and always has done, right? So,
Yeah.
which kind of brings us neatly in a way after 1 hour and 4 minutes, a little bit it's back to the movie and the idea that it's about creating a story, whether we're talking celluloid or movies or the reality. It's still
Mm.
about creating a story, right?
Yeah, I mean, the story is what I love about fighting movies from back in the day is that the the actual emotionally bits are only like about like an hour or 45 minutes. The real meats, even the storytelling, is from the fights, like how they fight,
Yeah,
who they fight, what happens within the fight. And
yeah,
creating that is going to be a really exciting part of making this movie. Each individual style, how it combats each other. And
yeah.
in my head, I take it from the greats like George Foreman and Mike Tyson and what do you call it? Hearns, like Tommy
Yeah,
Hearns.
yeah,
But when I started working with the boxers, they all had their own unique styles as well. So now seeing how they're bringing their characters to life is really interesting. Plus,
yeah.
with Micah, one of the boxing coaches, he was really good at showing some of the non-boxers how to bring out
Shape
their
up. Yeah,
style. Like
yeah.
he had Joe use the style of Sonny Liston, and
Yeah.
he's really into. He's like, he's got big hooks, moves quite slowly, and he's quite
Yeah.
lumbering. I love Sonny Liston, but he was one of the biggest villains in boxing. But I
Yeah,
don't
he
think he was a
was.
bad
Yeah,
guy. I think he wanted to be loved, but
he
he
did.
was
Yeah, I think
he's just a big
it,
ogre to most people.
he was a misunderstood character, and he didn't have much of a chance being, allegedly one of 25 children to a poor Arkansas
X3, right?
sharecropper, um,
Yeah,
who escaped. He pretty much left home at 13 and went to, I think, St. Louis initially. Then he wound up in Philadelphia. Then he went to Denver. Then he ended up in Las Vegas. And I think he never
but
really
it's also
found his
how he beat
sort
Patterson.
of.
When he beat Patterson, people got quite upset because Patterson was almost like a really lovely, nice man, gentleman, and then this thug takes over.
Yeah, I think he was the ideal poster boy, Patterson, for the national advancement of coloured people, as it was called then. The the
Yes,
NAC, National Advancement. Yeah, NACP. I think there was another A in there. I don't know what the other A stood for. I think it was NAACP. But Patterson was soft spoken and kind of.
he was what people wanted to. He was like a Captain America
Yeah,
man. He was like, it's lovely, it's so nice, so polite. Because this man who posted about the kung fu movies, about the student and master relationship is quite interesting because we have that in our movie as well. We've got it with you and Jamal and
yeah.
how you guys fracture and that relationship never. Basically, you're both two stubborn old men that just won't
Yeah. Won't
go back
concede or
to.
admit to being wrong. Yeah, which.
Yeah, because like in the movie, you are in the wrong. So
Yeah,
it is down to you to apologize, but you two do have your own like pride to hold on to, and
yeah,
it's quite interesting to. I don't know how like this is where I'm like because the movie is so free flowing. Sometimes I'm rewriting even though we're filming. So
yeah.
the end sequence is still not clear as in what direction I want to go in.
But we'll find out when we get there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm writing as we go. Sometimes it's like I'll rewrite a
Yeah.
scene
I know
on the
that
day.
I like that. I like that process. To me, I think it kind of fits in with songwriting. Even when Keith Richards says, it was what's the song "Sympathy for the Devil." He said it started out as some kind of ballad and it finished up as a samba. He said you never really know what a song will become, and I think that's the process with the movie. For anyone who, like I say, I hope you all follow this journey, and I'll certainly be posting plenty of stuff, keeping your interest stoked in the movie. Once we've finished it, there will be a premiere. Perhaps we can, if there's enough interest, people can come to it.
Yeah,
Outside
happily.
of our own circle, and then we'll see what we can do with it, Jay. But it's.
Yeah.
I certainly look forward to the future weeks filming. It's the sort of thing. Initially, I was up for it, but as now I'm really locked into it and enjoying it a lot. So,
Oh, I
and
can
it's
see
been
that.
great
I
having
can
you on the
see.
show tonight too.
Oh, brilliant. No, it was fun. Thank you so much, Ben.
No worries. Listen, guys, you know the drill. Thanks for partaking tonight. I think it was a bit of a wild card show tonight. I apologise for being a little inconsistent with the Fridays and Sundays lately. You get it when you get it at the minute. I've got a lot going on in life, including making a movie, new girlfriend, but that's neither here nor there, really. I just can't resist saying it. I'm kind of buzzed about it.
Bragging.
You know, and all the rest of it. But you know the drill by now. Share it, like it, comment when it goes live as well, because that helps the algorithm. All these comments are dead once it goes into the live catalog. Spread the word, tell your friends, just make it bigger. As Don King used to say, make me big. That's what I'm asking. I leave it in your capable hands. Always a pleasure, Jay.
Nice one,
Guys,
mate.
peace out. Cheers.